So, I recently watched all the way to the end YuYu Hakusho, and I just have to say, it's freaking awesome. While it does spend a bit too much time with the teen romance stuff at the beginning, once you get into the whole ghost busting stuff, it's absolutely fantastic. However, once I saw the last few episodes and saw how absolutely insane it was, I got thinking. Compared to other characters in other series, on average, where the top tiers of YuYu Hakusho fit? Do they max out at city busters like All Might, or can the strongest characters take out a planet like Toriko? Well, discovering where YuYu Hakusho fits in the versus community is what this video is about. Now, who am I to do something like this? Honestly, I am just a fan of having fictional characters' powers quantified using real-life metrics, but if you don't know me, you can call me JoJo. Now, before we really get into this, I just wanted to say that I watched the dub of YuYu Hakusho, and I would have to say it was incredible. I don't watch the dub much, but the YuYu Hakusho dub is definitely in my top 3 dubs of all time, right behind Hunter x Hunter and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Though because I watched the dub, I might not be exactly correct on all the specifics. Okay, disclaimer out of the way, let's first discuss the incredible power that all these characters possess, and whether it will probably fit in the grand scheme of things in the versus community. To start off, it's very well documented that there have been multiple claims that the strongest apparitions and humans are strong enough to destroy the very planet itself. However, statements like this can't always be taken at face value, as they could be wrong. If they could be taken at face value, then there are a lot of characters who would be unquestionably considered planet busters. So, we'll be taking a look across the series and seeing if these statements make sense. Our first piece of evidence comes from very early on in the series when Koenma states that his father, the mighty King Inma, King Yama in the dub, but I like saying Inma better, is a believer in necessary casualties, and that if Yusuke doesn't get the 3 stolen items back, King Inma would sink a continent.
My dad's big on acceptable losses. He'll destroy whole cities. If Dad gets angry, the whole world will suffer. Everything's fire and brimstone with him. He might sink an entire continent to get those 3 artifacts back.
This statement is our first indication of the power of a high-level demon, and King Inma is only an A-class demon, potentially upper A. Now, if you haven't seen YuYu Hakusho, then this makes no sense, so let me explain it. In YuYu Hakusho, it is how both demons and humans are classified. When they reach a certain level of power, they are placed into a classification with an alphabetical letter signifying what category they're in. This ranking goes from E-class, which are pretty rare because they're pretty weak, all the way to S-class, which are very rare because they're incredibly strong. So while the sinking a continent statement is unsubstantiated, as we never see King Inma fight, the spirit world would certainly not be ruled by a weakling, and we've seen what an upper B-class demon can take. Toguro, the main baddie and probably the best villain for much of the early series, tanks this massive spirit gun from Yusuke without issue.
Is that all you got for me? I expected more.
Of course, this is clearly not anything near continent level, but the difference between ranks is vast, and Toguro took it without a scratch. For example, a lower S-class human, Sensui, took out 3 A-class demons without pretty much any effort at all. In fact, the power gap is so wide that if he wanted to, he probably could have one-shotted them. So, if a lower S-class could do this, then it makes the claims of the strongest demons planet busting much more plausible. However, I'm not just asking you to take some random statement from the dub, so instead of that, let's look at some evidence that's a bit more solid. And what I mean by that is let's look at Toya. You don't remember him? I don't blame you. He's not really a major character, but during the final arc, he uses his powers to cover this entire treetop in a giant snow globe, freezing pretty much everything inside it. The thing is, these aren't small trees. These have multiple ecosystems in order to allow demons the best area to use their power in.
Okonenju stalks, gargantuan plants that house entire ecosystems on their plateau buds.
According to Death Battle, these trees are about 700 to 900 kilometers wide. That's about half the size of Greenland, in case you were wondering. Yet, Toya was able to effectively freeze over everything in the dome casually, and he is considered a regular S-class demon. Of course, This is not planet level, but the raw power needed to make this snow globe is probably more than enough to destroy a couple continents, as, while it might not cover an entire continent, by volume, it should be able to fit 4 or 5 in there. And this is not Toya's strongest attack, yet he's not the only character in S-Class who has shown excessive levels of power. In his fight with Shigure, Kurama uses his power to make this tree grow to massive size. I mean, if this tree is 700 kilometers wide, then this tree is probably the size of the moon or bigger. And it takes quite a bit of power for any plant to grow, so this could certainly end up being insanely powerful. Not to mention that at the time he did this, he was a lower S-Class demon, an entire rank lower than Toya. Kurama was also nearly out of power when he did this, so at his peak he should be way stronger.
There's no way you can unearth the Okaninju with the amount of power you have left in that form.
So, just taking a look at a few of these feats, as well as characters like Genkai, and since we're confirming that this power does exist, we can conclude quite easily that S-Class and upper S-Class demons are capable of planet busting. Not to mention that we have Yusuke and Yomi doing this, and this has been calculated to be worth anywhere from 200 zetatons to over 1,000 zetatons of TNT. Well above what is required for planet busting. Of course, this power is one thing, but let's not forget that characters in YuYu Hakusho are pretty fast. Very early on in the series, likely when he was comparable to a C-Class, Yusuke dodges multiple lightning bolts. Considering that the step leader of a lightning bolt moves about 220,000 miles per hour, and we can assume that Yusuke should be able to move at the same speed or greater. However, this was super early on, and the characters struggled against C-Class demons, so by the time they become S-Class, they are leagues stronger. While there probably is a better way to find the power difference between the classes, we're going to use a rather simple method, and likely flawed. The difference in power between lower S-Class and upper A-Class is probably the same as any low, mid, and upper of any class. This means that because a lower S-Class could take out 3 A-Class demons, the difference between each of these levels must be greater than 3 times. And the difference between upper and lower of any class should be at least 27 times. This means that the difference between a lower C-Class and an upper S-Class should be somewhere around 19,683 times, as these numbers multiply against each other. Applying this to a lower C-Class demon or human capable of dodging lightning, we find that an upper S-Class demon should be capable of moving at about 4.33 billion miles per hour, or about 6 times the speed of light. Now, I am going to be bluntly honest here, this turned out way more reasonable than I expected. In my first version of this calculation, I had them in the hundreds of thousands of times faster than light. I was using Hiei killing 500 A-Class demons. Anyways, the only thing that could cause an issue with this scaling is Yusuke's spirit gun. After all, his spirit gun has a lot of similarities to lasers. It travels in a straight line, it even reflects off mirrors. Guys, for reference, reflecting off mirrors is a big one because it's actually pretty rare. Though, it's not a deal breaker if it doesn't. So, if this is true and Yusuke's spirit gun has the properties of light, then they can cause all sort of things to get wacky. But either way, it's clear that top tier characters are faster than light, even if by a small amount. So if I was going to place YuYu Hakusho among other series and franchises, I would immediately be looking at a place somewhere near Toriko, but slightly higher than Naruto. This is because the top tiers are more than capable of devastating a continent, and the very tops are capable of destroying a planet. I would also put YuYu Hakusho between Toriko and Naruto when it came to speed as well. Now of course, these are just guidelines, not really rules, so any sort of serious debate would require far more in-depth analysis. I just didn't want to do all that work quite yet. So, whatever. Maybe sometime I will. I have to say, Yusuke vs Ichigo is looking like a really good matchup in my opinion. So all in all, I'd say that I'm thinking about going back and reading the manga and rewatching the anime to get some ideas for videos and educate myself more on the series. Because it's a great series. I have a few good ideas, but they'll take a while to make. All that said, thanks for watching, see you next time, remember to stay spectacular, JoJo, out.